Hello, hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Nice. Hi, Marcus King.
Hello.
Ooh,
Right.
chat.
I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab something to snack on.
Mm-hmm.
Is my audio? Okay, there we go.
Yeah, your audio is okay. We can hear you. 1 second.
I don't know if everyone knows who I am. I'm Hez. Um, I'm Hezekiah. I go by Hez. I teach 3D modeling at UCF. I also teach VFX as well. Uh, I run my own studio called Glass Cat Studios, where we used to be a VR studio, and now we just make fun games that we like. Currently, we're working on a game called True Mechanics. It started out as a game jam game with a few people inside of here. Since then, I've been developing it, and I've been like posting a few shots inside of the Discord server as well. So you might see a few concepts. I recently posted a character. Sorry about the pause. Had to let my dog out, or let my dog back in. Thank you, Sebastian. Had one of the alumni from FIA built the character. Uh, they've been like really killing it. Picked up concept artists who've been drawing up the designs and all of the mock-ups. So it's been a great time building out that. But today I'll be talking about materials in Unreal. Uh, I try to make this pretty straightforward. A few things, just giving you the project basics and showing how to set up materials, because that's what everyone's here for, right? Building up materials, learn how to use those. Ideally, you'll be using these inside of your games. Uh, I didn't know if I should define what a material is or if everybody knew what a material was. Uh, can I
You
get
can go
like,
ahead and define it.
all right, I'll go ahead and do that. So, uh, the best way I can explain a material is it's what you apply onto your mesh or geo. So I thought of this analogy earlier that if you had like a GIF and you took a thing of wrapping paper and put it around it, and now that is the material. So it's like if it's a white piece of wrapping paper, it has a material around it that's white. Materials encompass textures. So if that white material has nothing on it, and I made like a red and blue texture in Photoshop and applied it to it, now my material has those red and blue attributes applied to it. Uh, you can see here with the UE4 guy. Is my screen still showing? Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah, you're good.
the UE4 guy, he currently has two materials on him at the moment. If I click on him and go to the side, and just actually I have to go even deeper. There we go. He has two materials on him at the moment. If I were to like click this, you see that it changed to another material, which is this default material. Uh, and today I'll show you how to make one of these or like the one that I just had on. I'm going to undo really quickly just so I can show you what we're going to be doing today inside of this session. So I have the UE4 guy. I made a material and placed it onto him. I have a blueprint that's there and it says stand here. So if I walk here, it changes the color of my UE4 guy. If I leave there, it changes it back to normal. So this is what we're going to do today is we're going to cover how to make a material, how to make a material instant, and then also we're going to cover how to integrate those into blueprints. So it's a three-part workshop. I'm going to try to make sure that everything is like easy to flow through. If you have any questions, feel free to like say, hey, has, or speak up or type in chat. Like, wait, roll back. I didn't get that part. All right. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to swap him back to his old materials. So I went in here and I changed it. Your folders may not look like this. So when you first start up the project, you'll have a geometry, mannequin, third person, and a third person BP folder. I made an art folder just for organization. It's often nice to have this. It keeps everything clean, keeps everything predictable. So I made an art folder. You can right click, make a new folder, type up art, uh, demo, and just press enter and it'll make your folder and jump into there, make another folder called materials. This helps out because all your art is located in one spot. And it's, like I said before, it's easy to find things. The next thing, I'm going to jump into this folder, and here's where I house my materials. As you can see, I have two materials. One is my master material, and one's my basic material, which is my material instance. In order to make one of these, you would right click, scroll up to material, and then click on it. So I generally give everything naming convention, so it's easy to find it. And I can apply this to other things later on. So I call this MM, and now I'm going to call this master map. And then I'm going to just double click on it to open it. Once you open it, this is what the material looks like. It's a base material. It has nothing on it. This is a UE4 grid. If you take a material off of an object, that's what everything has. It's just so you can see your model. If it didn't have that, you probably wouldn't see anything there. And here's what it looks like when it's rendered. So it's just a black material, has a little speck to it, but we're gonna like change some values in here to alter that. So there's a lot of shortcuts, and I'll try to like say them as I go throughout the process. Some of these are second nature to me, so I just do them so quickly that I don't even pay attention. When you first open up your node editor, you have this, which it has the same name that you named your material, and it has a few nodes that you can see. A few of them are grayed out. You have your base color that just influences the color of your object. Metallic determines how reflective it is. The spec, if you highlight over these, they tell you exactly what they do. So as you can see, it scales the current amount of specular on it. It's non-metallic surface. The roughness will make things a little more rough. It can shift between 0 and 1 in order to smooth something out, or make it 1 to make it rough. Emissive, if you've ever seen games in Unreal, a lot of games in Unreal use emissive like it's nobody's business. Like everyone's trying to make a Tron game or something when they're using Unreal. You have your opacity, you have your opacity mask. These are grayed out, and I'll tell you why and show you how to ungray them out in a second. You have your normals. You're not wrong. I'm just calling it like it is. If you Google like materials in Unreal, most likely someone's gonna make an emissive material because it's like the go-to. Everyone likes the bloom. So no, I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I'm just saying that's what you're gonna find. Normal materials, if you're not familiar, you might know these by height maps or bump maps. They're pretty much the same thing. It pretty much projects on the model that it has height information. World position offset. This one's kind of weird. We're not even going to touch this one today. Just know that it can do some cool, funky stuff like offsetting the way your material looks. You can do this with normal information to offset vertices on your model. Like there's just tons and tons of things you can do with this. Ambient occlusion shows where your shadows and highlights are. If you use Substance Painter or if you baked your textures, that will come in and you can see where it darkens corners and edges. So it's like each one of these have their own like special thing. Tessellation, we're not going to use, or world displacement, we're not going to use that either. Just note these two really cool. They do pretty much this, but on a higher scale. This is very expensive when you're using it. I doubt anyone would use this, but unless you're like using like terrain or trying to like fool the eye. I know a few people who've used it to make water. That's generally what it's used for. Over here, we have our details panel. And here is your bread and butter. You get a lot of the things to adjust this. So you have your material domain, you have your surface. If you click through these, it gives you different types of materials that Unreal supports. So you have deferred decal. If you've ever seen grime or water materials on the floor in your games, they're most likely decals where they've placed these like stickers in the world and they just project a design in there in that location. Not saying they're all decals because some people will paint in that detail, but mostly decals you can plop anywhere. You can paint, use them as graffiti on walls. That's the kind of stuff that you will use. Light functions is so if you're using a material and a light to project in the world. Uh, I haven't used volume, but post-processing, say for instance, you go into water and it gives you like that distortion on the screen. That's generally where you'll run into the post-processing effects. If you're taking hits in games like Overwatch, you'll see like the red come on the screen, most likely a post-processing effect or a UI effect, which leads to the next thing, user interface, which is the UI. You can make materials that you can apply to your user interface. This one right here, I've never used. I'm not even going to lie to you. I've never used the virtual texture before. So there's that. Blend modes. So at base, your model starts off as opaque. Then as you run through the different settings, it'll affect these over here. So if I go to mask, you'll notice that opacity mask has activated. And you can think of mask, if you've used Photoshop, it works in the same vein as a mask in Photoshop. So black conceals, white reveals. If you use a black and white mask, anything that's white will show itself, anything that's black will hide, and anything in between will gradient fade. Actually, that's a little backwards. The mask only works with black and white. Translucent does the gradient fade. This one's a little bit more expensive, especially in Unreal. There's other methods you can use in order to get like a translucent effect to happen in Unreal. It's just things will get more expensive and you'll have more draw calls when you use translucent over using probably a mask with like little dots to give the appearance or the pseudo look of translucent. Additive. Uh, this is generally, I only use this when I'm making visual effects, in honesty. Like this is mostly where I use additive. There's different shading modes. So there's so much. Like unlit, I use that for visual effects because I don't want things to be affected by light. Default lit just allows the objects to be affected by light. Subsurface, if you've ever seen models where people project their like skin or ear, you see that reddish tint on the ends of their noses or their ears or fingertips. That's generally where you use subsurface scattering and so on and so on. I'm gonna try to limit it, the breakdown to things that we're gonna be using during this session, just so I don't like overwhelm you with like information. Fair enough? Cool. So the last thing, I'm just gonna float around this area. Two-sided materials, if you've ever brought a material object into Unreal, and say for instance, you brought a plane in here. If you don't have two-sided materials on, and I can actually click this, let's see if this gives me what I want. You don't see it on this side, but you can see it on this side. Activating two-sided allows you to see this once it's done compiling the 188 shaders. It allows you to see it from both sides. This is a little bit more expensive when it comes to Unreal just because it's now trying to calculate the material on one side and the other side. It might be easier for you just to make the other side of this. Like if you're using a plane, if the player is never going to see this side or enter that side, you don't have to worry about it. But if a player is going to go to the other side of this wall, you might want to add the two-sided. An interesting thing about this as well, if you don't use two-sided on your model, it pretty much voids everything that the engine will look for. So if I put this model inside the level and I didn't have two-sided on, if I walked from one side, say for instance, I walked around here. If I walked around there and there was nothing there, I could easily walk from this side and go straight through the wall. But if I walk from the front and hit this plane, it would stop me. So that's, there's like a give and take between the two of what you're trying to do. Like if you're never, like I said before, if you're never going to see the other side of this, you don't have to worry about it. Just have it as is and go from there. Using material attributes, that's where you're getting into the bread and butter of Unreal. Like you're making custom function nodes, in order to empower your materials. I can most likely talk about that if there was like a third part of this material workshop. I can most likely jump into that during that time. But let's start making this thing look like something. So I'm going to change this back to opaque. I'm going to change this over here. I switched to this and didn't even talk on it. Here's how you can see how your materials are projecting on objects and what they'll look like in the space. You can choose any one of these and it'll show based on the UVs of the object what they look like. If you click this one, say for instance you have a model already and you want to see what it looks like in the viewport, you can select the model inside of the content browser and then it'll appear over here. If I try to do that without selecting anything, it'll tell me, hey, you need to select something to preview. So I can actually take the UE4 guy, click this, and then click here, and then now I have the UE4 guy that I can test my materials against. Everybody there? Got your UE4 guy in here? Any questions? Okay. I'll take your silence as no questions. So the first thing I'm going to do in here is I'm going to introduce a few of the basic shortcuts, and then we're going to run from there. So you don't see the UE4 guy on the right side of the screen. Over here in the level. Jake or Jack, hello? Yeah, it's clicking the skeletal mesh. So I did this. I had this guy clicked from earlier, and I just clicked this magnifying glass to go find it. It's a shortcut to just finding it anywhere. So if I was at the content browser and I didn't want to look for it, if I just click this, it'll jump to that, and then I can select it and add it into here. Yes, Christian, that's it. So I have my UE4 guy in here, and now that everybody's here, I'm gonna do some of the shortcuts. So a lot of these, most likely if you hit a key inside of, hold a key and click, you'll get something. So if you hold 1 and click, you'll get a single parameter node. And this node is referred to as a constant. Most of the stuff that you find over here, you can find over here. The shortcuts are over here too. So I just literally just did this, or you can just drag out a constant. If I press 2, I get a constant vector 2. And all these have these little drop down menus where you can see what they look like. I'm gonna click 3, gives me a vector 3. And with these values, or what they're showing here, like you can notice that they change as I go through the values. So this one's just a value. If I click this one, it gives me an R and a G, which is a red and green. If I click this one, it gives me, now I have to do a drop down. It gives me the RGB channels, which are red, green, and blue. This one I can adjust by clicking this. I can change the color and press OK. And once Unreal is done compiling all the shaders, it'll show here. That's generally what you'll use this drop down arrow. If you're not interested in seeing it, then you don't have to. Actually, I'm gonna turn on this too. Everyone there? Once you're there, I'm just gonna take this and just plug it. Yeah, I can show that one more time. So if you press hold 3 and click, you get a constant 3. It has a bar now. Like before I clicked it open, it looks like this. It's just a constant. If you click on this, you have the color picker. You can change the color to whatever you want. By moving this around, you can see the bar changes over here. It won't change unless you move this one up. So then now it can project different colors. And in order to have this color, you push OK. And the next thing I was going to do is from here, I was going to click and drag and plug it into base color. Into base color. There we go. Let's see if I close some of these things, if I can get some of this stuff to speed up. So once this is done compiling, this should project on the model this color. And if you notice, it's projecting on the first value of the UE4 guy. Let's scroll down a little bit. There's my UE4 guy preview. Blue guy time. Oh yeah. So mine is most likely just taking a little longer just because I'm streaming and I'm also trying to compile shaders. So depending on your computer, it's going to take a bit for the shaders to compile. I don't know why, but whenever you do one thing in the shader in Unreal, even if you're not touching all the other ones, it likes to compile all of them at the same time. Anybody have questions on this part while it's like compiling? Oh yeah, always. Like I dread having to push apply or save. Which I feel like it wasn't always like that. Because in my older versions of Unreal, like way older versions of Unreal, I don't recall the shaders just taking forever to compile. I will talk on a few other things while we're here. Uh, uh, so what I had everyone do is I had them make a folder, make a material folder by right-clicking, make a new folder. And then once you make your material folder, if you click on material and open it, then you'll have the same editor that we have open at the moment. I'm not gonna be hyped for that at all. Like, uh, I'm just imagining how long it's gonna take everything to run. Just imagine the building time. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm like, huh, no poly count. Like, I'm interested in seeing how that works in VR. No problem. That's my biggest thing. I want to see what happens in VR. Uh-huh. It's like, I feel like everybody went wild. They're like, oh, no poly counts. It's like, but we still have to rig it. The thing is too, is like, how are they gonna to do the textures on that? It's like, what about the UVs? Oh my goodness, it's gonna be painful. I'm not looking forward to it. It's like I'm just waiting for the first person to like toss in their giant sculpt, and it's just like, oh yeah, here we go, and everything just dies. It's like you set no limit. I'm gonna push it to the edge. It's like computer just catches fire. You do the same. Sorry about the time frame of this. I only plugged in one node and it's still like compiling. Which is fair.
Would it be helpful if like I shared my screen to walk through it? Because I already got blue guy.
Oh yeah, go for it. Please and thank you.
All right.
Do that.
I'll just share. I'll have to go full screen.
I have to stop over here.
All right.
Cool beans. So yeah, there you go. Blue guys in here. Everyone should look like this, where you can like change the colors and swap them up. That's ideally. I need to find out what type of computer you have because yours swapped like instantly. Mine
I'm
just
not
is,
compiling a bunch of shaders right now.
I don't even know why I'm compiling a whole bunch of shaders. Like all I didn't even do anything. Hold on, let me see. All right, since your computer works with this, the next thing I was gonna do is tell everybody to hold 4 and click.
4, click. Oh, that's F4. There we go.
There we go. So the difference between these two is now that this thing has a alpha. So the alpha inside of this allows you to manipulate the hold on a second. The translucency of the object. So like if you use a PNG on this object, you can plug that from the material or the texture directly into the object. So, and you can see there how it's like doing the transparency of the object. Whew. All right. If that's the problem, if it's 224, I might drop down to 222 then and see if that helps out. The next thing I was going to do inside here is convert this to a parameter so that people can adjust this. So if you push OK on this after you make it, and if you right click on the node and convert to a parameter, and just give it a name. Like I generally call this like color tint or something like that. Perfect. And if you plug it into your base color, and apply this, the future, like when you make a material instance, you'll be able to adjust this. So this one readily shows you all the other nodes that it has. So it gives you the RGB channels and the alpha available to manipulate. If we go back to the folder where we made our initial material at, and we right click on the material, at the very top you should see create material instance, and click on that. And I generally call this MI and give it a name. In my demo project, I just called it basic.
Just basic or basic mat?
That's perfect. And the cool thing about this is if you clicked on the new material instance that you created, you now can manipulate the color on the right-hand side. So on the right-hand side, you see you have the color option. They're all grayed out. You can't adjust them until you click the little checkbox there. And now you can manipulate this. So if you notice in a content browser, the colors are flickering and updating this material, but not changing the master material. If we didn't uncheck this box and went back to the master material, whatever the master material does, the material instance will do. So if you made this purple and applied this,
Oh, yeah.
yes, it is good practice to make a master material. That way you can apply the same material to everything inside of your game. It makes it a lot cheaper for draw calls. A lot of the cases is people generally make a whole bunch of materials and then their game has to compile all of those shaders from every individual thing. It makes it a lot easier on the engine if you make one master material, because what it does is it'll branch off to all of the references of the same material instead of having to jump to the next one. If you unclick color tint, Heather, you'll see that this material has gone back to how the parent is. Pretty much what you're doing by enabling this inside the material instance, you're allowing to overwrite the initial material of the object. So
Cool.
if we go off to back into the material, the master material, there's a few other things that we can do. So say for instance, you couldn't choose a color or you want to do some really funky stuff. We're gonna make a copy of this color tint node that you created here already.
All right.
So you can either copy and paste it. You can either control, I think, yeah, W to duplicate it. Either way.
Ooh.
So you notice that both of these have the same name. If you change the first one or the second one, change the color, and then push OK. Oh, it's supposed to change both of them. Oh, I guess because it's not plugged in. So generally, if they're both plugged in, what it will do is Unreal will read both of these as the same thing and tell both of them to do the same exact action. But we don't want this. So on the side over here, make this one color tint 2. Just put a 2 behind it.
On the side.
Yep,
There
over
it
there.
is.
If you click that and put 2. And the next thing I want you to do is hold A and click in the editor. There you go. So you get an add node. I want you to plug both of those into both the colors into the add node, and then the back of the add node, which is the output, plug it into your base color. And then if you notice, what it's doing is taking both of those colors and combining them together. So if you apply this and go back to your material instance, you'll see that now you have both these colors available over here. So you can now manipulate both of these side by side. And yes, for this to work, they both need to be parameters. There we go. Now I can see this stuff. Okay.
Nice.
So now you can add these colors. If you go back to the master material, we can also do other stuff. So if you hold S and click, you should get a subtract node. Oh no, that's a scalar node. My bad. Give me, like I said, it's going off of memory on a lot of these things. I'm over here like, let's do, I'm gonna just create a blank project just so I can jump back into it. Let's see if I remember. If you go to the right to the search bar, so you have the palette, go to the search bar. If you type in subtract and drag that out and plug the two colors into it, you can have both the colors subtract from one another now. Since your computer is moving a lot faster, you might be able to preview this inside here if you push the drop down arrow on the subtract node.
Oh,
There we go.
damn.
So you can see like within inside the editor what's happening to your material before you apply it, just to see if this is something that you want to do or if it's something you don't want to do. I'm going to quickly try to make this stuff and see what happens.
Order does matter for subtract.
It does. Because basically what it's doing is it's taking each one of the values from one another and subtracting it. So if all the values in the red channel on the first one are, I guess I'll say 1, and the one on the second one is also 1, it'll subtract 1 from 1 and remove all of your red values from your object. If your top value was 0 and you subtract 1 from the other red value, it will go to 0 again. Generally, the values go from 0 to 1 unless you offset it by a larger number. The higher that number goes, the more emissive it gets. So if we were to take a number, let's go into our color tint node.
In the basic?
No, right where you were at. So if you click
All
on that one, and we're going to go into the color. I want you to make the red one 10. If you notice, the colors have changed a little bit. So if you look at the old and new, it has this really hot spot in the middle, and then on the sides, it has like the red value. In Unreal, the more you increase your number past 1, the more emissive it'll get. So what we could do is we can take this value, and instead of plugging into base color, if you push OK, let's plug it into emissive.
Oh, shoot.
He's really glowing now.
It's the glowing diner guy meme.
You can change him pretty much by going back inside the tint, and any of those values that you offset by 10, leaving the other ones smaller, will change the value and change the color to that being the main emissive color. You can also combine it. So you can do 10 in red and 10 in green and leave blue where it's at, and then you'll see that it offsets the values even more so. Ta-da, we made emissive today. All right. Other nodes inside of here. Let's see, I'm back in action over here. I don't know what type of computer you have, Heather, but your computer is killing it because
Hey.
I immediately plugged mine in and it started compiling 200 nodes out of nowhere.
Oh, no.
And it's a clear project. There's nothing in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do shortcuts on my side and go from there. Cool beans?
All right.
All right. So let's get other stuff in here, such as a texture node. So if you hold T and click, you'll get a texture sample node. Generally, this is what you'll use whenever you're making a material in Unreal. So if you plug the top value from there, which is the RGB channel, into your basic color, or your base color, it'll give you an error saying, hey, it's missing a node. So let's go find a material or texture to plug into there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the content browser. We're going to go into the mannequin and go into textures.
Mannequin textures. I do not have that folder.
Go into characters. Or character.
There we go.
Yeah, and then texture. So within here, we have a few textures for the Unreal guy. Let's see what we're gonna grab. Let's grab the UE4 logo, the card, the second one. Yeah, let's grab that one. And then we're gonna go back to our material. And if you look at the left-hand side, you'll see that you have in the details panel, a texture slot. If you press that arrow while the texture's selected, it'll pop onto the character. So let's unplug our emissive for now so we can see how this is on the UE4 guy. It's most likely going to stretch around him and look very weird because his UVs don't necessarily line up properly to this. So let's zip around him and see. So yeah, you can kind of see it where he has those values. It's like he has like spots around him. Let's use the other material that's in there. The UE4 matte mask. Yep, that one. Let's plug that one in. So remember earlier when we were looking at these nodes and you have the RGB channels? If you notice, he's also colored with the RGB channels. So if you drag out from the red of this texture sample and plug it into base color, let's see what happens then. So only the red parts of his body have shown up white. Let's do also the same thing for green. Let's see what parts of his body are green. So the main part of his body is green. Let's see what happens if we take that green channel and plug it into the add node with one of the color tints.
Oh. Oh, maybe not color tint 1.
So now we see that the components that are actually occupied by this actually have like a greenish tint to it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what happens if we use this next node. It's kind of one of my favorite nodes. If you hold L and click, you get a lerp node. And what that does is it takes whatever the first value is and the second value, and it places them on top of each other or puts them together. It's not like an add node, because an add node, what it would do is it'll take both of the colors information and come out with a brand new color. What this is doing is stacking the colors on top. So let's make another add node, and let's add the pink node that you made to the red one.
The red channel?
Mm-hmm. And we're going to plug both those adds into the lerp node. And then the output from the lerp into base color. Oh, I know what I did wrong here. We need another node. So we've gotten our add node, we've gotten a subtract node, but there's other types of math that we can use here. So hold M and press in the viewport.
Yeah, multiply.
So let's multiply the colors instead of adding them by the RGB channels.
All right, I'll do that on the... Let's see, which ones?
The reason why this didn't work, if you remember earlier, what we talked about is if we add something, we're adding the values of that specific channel to the other thing that is plugged into it. And we don't want to actually do that. This time we want them to take on the attributes. So if we plug that into the lerp, And then we're going to do the same thing with the other value because currently the green is overpowering it. So let's do a multiply on the green as well.
All right. And that was
There we go. That looks more like how we wanted him to look.
yeah.
If we wanted to do some adjustments to the model as well. So currently, if you look at the lerp node, it's at 0.5. What it's telling you is that it's smack dab in the middle between these two colors. If we click the lerp node and go to the constant alpha, if we decide to change that value, it's going to offset it. So it'll take more of the B value the closer it gets to 1. It'll take less of the B value the closer it gets to 0. I'm going to try to get this, see if anybody's... Is there a way to organize our nodes with a shortcut? Not necessarily. If you highlight your nodes, I think the graph editor has this. If you highlight them and right click on the nodes. Oh, actually, yeah, there are shortcuts. There are a lot of keys to them though. If you go to alignment, and let's do a alignment of the center. So Alt Shift S, it'll put them all in a straight line. And then if you right click again on all of them highlighted and go to alignment again, you can distribute vertically. Not as much as I wanted it, but you know, probably works better in that form. So that's one way that you could organize the nodes. There's not like an automatic like clean up all my nodes button. How do you get rid of the emissive? By reducing the value that you plugged in from above 10 to 1 again.
And if you right click and hit break link, that'll disconnect the cord.
There's also another shortcut that you could use. If you hold Alt and click on any of the nodes that's plugged in, it'll break the link as well. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to see the chat. I'm now looking at her to make sure I hit everybody's comments. Yes, it is comparable to blend modes in Photoshop. So there's something else we can do because currently, if you know about Unreal, it's known for its spaghetti and not the kind you eat. If you want to organize these a little bit, what you could do is, I wish. If you double click on any of the lines that you have here, it'll make a reroute node. What that does is it allows you to adjust how your lines are to straighten and clean up how they plug into one another. So if you select the dot, Heather, like move your mouse until it changes to, it'll have like a translating icon. So like release and just hover over it a little bit. There you go.
Oh.
That, you can readjust the nodes and put them in places that actually helps align. Oh, we're really going the distance with this reroute node, huh?
Sure.
These are very helpful when you're trying to organize your blueprints or your node base. Also, if there's ever a time where you have things in here that you're not using and you don't want to use, Unreal has provided something really cool, which is this cleanup. It's at the top next to the home button.
All right.
So say, for instance, we made a whole bunch of nodes and we don't use all things that are not plugged in, the cleanup will remove them.
Lovely.
So now you can actually organize how you want them to be.
much more manageable.
All right. So we have this node here. We're using it currently, but I think it'll be easier for us to turn this texture or to manipulate this if we turn our texture sample into a parameter. And the reason you might ask, why would I do this? What's the point of converting this into a parameter? If you notice, instead of you having to come back into here and change it every single time, you can actually change it inside of the material instance. You can call this base color texture. Perfect. And if you apply this, I'm going to show you the reason why we're making material instances and why we're talking about this whole pipeline. So could you minimize this window for me, Heather? And click on the UE4 guy. All right, you already have him there. Can you hold Alt and drag to the left?
Oh. There we go.
And then do it one more time. So the next step that I want you to do is in the third person, like in the details panel on the right-hand side, can you click mesh? So details, go down. You'll see in the top part of there, you have mesh. So go up some more.
This is the top.
I wonder, this is gonna be shenanigans, but could I do this?
All right.
This is awful. That's all I'm gonna say. Did you put that texture in here?
It's in the mannequin character. Yeah. Textures.
Oh no, I need the material.
Oh,
Is
it's
it here?
in let me see.
You can drive.
It's in here.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna take our material instance that we made and I'm going to apply it to this guy. So we have one guy with the material instance on him, and then I'm going to take the master material, and I'm going to plug it onto this one. So what I'm doing is I'm clicking the material. After I click into the geo of the UE4 guy, just to make sure I can access the first element, and then I'm clicking this. You might ask, what's the difference between these two? This is only the chest plate of the UE4 guy, and this is the full body of the UE4 guy. If I revert this and click here, you won't see it until we jump into the scene and rotate around him. And see that it's on his chest. This is the reason why we're plugging in this material into here. There's other ways we can do this. Like you can also like drag this onto the UE4 guy as well. I could take this and do that, and it works as well. So we have these two with material instances. The cool thing about this is I can also make another material instance of this, and I'll call it mi underscore and jump into this one. And now I can change the colors of this one. I'll probably make this red. And then I can now take this and put it on the original one. So the difference between us doing this and us using the master material, you know how these two have the same material because I just duplicated them off? If I go back to the master material and I don't know, I say I want this one, which isn't available right now. I'm gonna convert this into a parameter. and apply that. So if I change the material on this and I say, all right, here we go. I'm going to make this blue. Notice these two change, but these two don't change. And it becomes more valuable the more you do this method. Also, some people may question, why don't I just make a duplicate of the master material instead of doing the material instances? I'll show you. So say for instance, I made a duplicate of this, and that's fine for the name. But in this one, I'm building up all my information and it has all these values available for me. Every time I want to adjust the values within this, I actually have to open up this. And on my side, I have to do a lot of compiling, and most likely, if your computer is not as strong as Heather's, you have to do a lot of compiling as well. Doing it from the material instance level is a lot faster. You don't have to worry about compiling all the shaders whenever you do this, sometimes. But the biggest thing about this is if I go over here, and so I made a duplicate over here, I haven't plugged up my B channel yet, so I'm going to make another component. So and I'm going to plug this into here, plug this into here. I'm going to make another lerp. Plug all of these in, and then plug this into this lerp. And this last tint, I'm going to make it, actually, this should do what I was trying to explain earlier, which is if I turn this to red, it turned both of these because they both have the same name. The only way to stop that from happening is if I go here and change the name to 3. So now I can manipulate this color however I want to. And I'm going to make this like yellow. And then if I do a drop down on this, you can see this lerp only handles these two colors, while this lerp handles all of the colors together. So I'll apply this, and I'll take the material that I made a duplicate of and apply it to this. And this one to that one.
Looks like they're both selected.
Yeah, they're both inside the same thing. Okay.
Whack.
Yeah, right. Let's delete this one. That's the reason why it's at a lower level. I was like, what is happening here? So let's alt drag this one over so they have their own thing, and I'll plug this one onto this. So the cool thing about this is because I updated this master material and I applied it, now these have a third channel that I can now change the color to. So I can do whatever I want because this is a child of the master material. So I have this one. If I wanted that other material, so this one, to be able to do the same thing, I would have to go into this one, add all the same nodes in order to do the same functionality all over again. Every single time I make an update, if I just duplicated the first one, I'll keep having to go back into the last one that I duplicated. And you see how like time consuming it gets? It's not that much when you have 3, but when you go up to like 50 models and you're doing this all over again, that's when it really becomes very tedious. So ideally, whenever you're making a project, you would do master material, then you'll make your material instance that has all your exposed parameters. The cool thing about this too is because in here I made this its own little texture that I can manipulate. Now if I wanted to, if I click this magnifying glass and then I go to this and plug this in, it doesn't have the RGB channel. So the only thing I'm getting on this is one single color manipulating it. It comes very helpful. Say for instance, if I have a whole bunch of environmental props and I'm like, hey, I have another character. I don't want to make another master material because they're going to have the same thing. I can literally just take this material or take this and build up another material for this cube. This isn't going to look good. Yeah. Everybody following the importance of making master materials and why to use them?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to go back to the material editor. Heather, thank you for letting me use your computer.
No problem.
So going from here, I think how many people have actually like made a model, probably used like Substance Painter or something like that, and you had like all your textures created? A few people. So, and how many have made materials for Unreal? So the difference in between Unreal and Unity, whenever you bring in like a material from Substance Painter, when you attach all the materials, so Substance Painter for Unity will give you like probably like 3 channels. It'll give you your roughness in a texture, your spec in a texture, ambient occlusion. Unreal, it'll give you something like this. The reason why it gives you something like this is because it compresses all into one channel. If I were to just preview only one of these channels, you'll see that this is the only thing I'm getting. And that's what I'm gonna go over today. So I wanted to do like a demo material just so you can see the base of all of this. What I'm gonna do now is make a master material. I'll follow your naming convention. I'll call it character. That's what I'll do. And the reason why I call this character is because I'm going to use it for everything. So we're going to fix the problem where you have like all these materials where they're all everywhere. And we're actually going to plug in these things, and I'll show you how to plug them in and where they go at today. So the big thing that I want to do is I want to go to the Unreal guy because he has a few textures. He has a few textures inside of his model that I can use. So I'm going to go and click filter, and I'm going to use this. If you're not using this when you're like going through the process and you're spending time clicking through folders, it might be counterproductive because if I click this, it'll show me all the materials or the textures that the Unreal guy has in his folders. As long as you go to the highest folder, it'll show you like pretty much everything that's in that folder. If you go to the highest folder, it'll show you all the textures you have inside of your content browser. But for this demo, I'm gonna build up the character master material. So we have this. This is kind of what your materials will look like inside of Unreal. So if you're on the content, if you click on the mannequin folder, go to filters, go up and enable textures, and it should turn on and give you all of the textures. I just disabled mine. If I click it back on, it'll show me all the textures. The same thing works with other things too, such as if I go to materials, it'll show me all the materials inside of here. If I go here and I'm like, I only want to see like material instances, then there you have there as well. But for this sake, I only need the textures. So I'm going to grab this one, which is the RGB mass material. I'm going to grab this one because this is normal material. It doesn't have a base color, base texture, but I'm going to use this one just for the sake of the demo. So I'll have 3 of these that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to start setting these up. The cool thing about these are, I know what they are, but also I want to make all these into parameters to modify. So select all, convert to parameter. The first one I'm going to call I think that's your naming convention that you use, Heather?
Pretty sure. Looks
All
about
right.
right.
Cool beans. You see, I like to conform to anybody's naming convention I'm currently using. So if that's what it is, it makes everything a lot easier when you're trying to find things. You might question like, why do you put like the prefix there? If I were to search for all my master materials in the project, all I have to do is type mm_, and every single master material will show up. I think I call this ORM. So the reason why it's ORM, some people call it ARM, is for each channel that you're going to be using. So you have your ambient occlusion, so occlusion, roughness, and your metallic. Starting from the top, your base color will go into your base color. Your normal will go into your normal. And generally, this order actually helps with how you would plug in things. So R goes here. So that's what you started out with. Then you'll shift up to R, then B, which I'm going to check my notes to make sure that I'm not getting this backwards. Let's see. You might question what the importance of this is. Yep, that's correct. Cool. It's because if you've already done all the textures and stuff inside of your project, inside of Substance Painter, and when you bring them over and connect them, if you don't plug your roughness and your metallic in the correct spot, then you're going to have some spots that are shiny and then other spots that are dull that are supposed to be the inverse. So this is the order of how you would plug in your material. Like I said before, if you use this ORM, it gives you that setup of how to plug them in, and it allows you to remember that a lot easier. Another way is ARM. So ambient occlusion, roughness, metallic. Just remember the abbreviation ARM, if anything. Everyone there?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So I'm going to apply this material, and then I'm going to click off of this and go back one layer, go to, I think, nope, materials. I'm going to just go to wherever this is. There we go. So I have my material, I have my new character master material. And like I said beforehand, since I have that, I can now go here and I'm going to call this mi underscore lowercase character 01. There we go. It's because I had the materials only. So now that I have this made, I'm going to go to this UE4 guy and give him back his material. So yeah, now we have our UE4 guy, but currently, if I click on the the material instance, the only things I can adjust are the base color, the normal, and the arm. And I'm also going to preview him in here so I don't have to go into the level. So click that. Now that it's selected, click this. So now I have my UE4 guy, and his insides are really shiny, like glossy. So if you remember earlier how I talked about, hey, we have these values, we can adjust, we can do all these things. We use multiply. We're going in full circle now. So beforehand, we use those add nodes. And right now I'm saying that my roughness or my metallic is way too high. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make multiply nodes for this. So if I hold M again, click, click, and click, I'm going to now do a few adjustments. I made not enough. So I need one for every plugin that I have going on. So one for color. This is the color one. This is my normal one. And then I need two more for the bottom one. So I'm just going to Control W, Control W. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate the base color. So if you remember last time, what we did is we plugged in a multiply. You plugged it into here, and we did something else here. When I don't plug in anything here, it turns my whole model black. So I want to make a color node. Oh, does the shortcuts not work like this? Huh. Okay. Guess I'm doing this. And I'm going to plug this in here. So immediately it's going to bark at me and say, hey, you're trying to like do some math between a float 4 and a float 3. So what I want to do is I want to convert this to a parameter. That immediately removes this and makes everything work the way I anticipated it functioning. I'm going to give this a name. And call it color tint. So I have my color tint, and for the most part, I'm just going to give this a base color of red just to start out with. So now my material is red. If I apply this and go back here, now my UE4 guy is red. The whole model's red. I can do some adjustments to this if I don't want him actually red. There you go. But my metallic and all my other stuff is still the same. Like I really want to adjust this. So I'm going to do something a little different. So before we made a constant 1 by just pressing 1 and clicking, or in my case, let me just drag this over here. Now we want to use this to offset our normal information. And I'm just going to plug this into here, this into here, and this one into here. So right now, my normal information is 0. So this thing is smooth and very, very shiny. What I want to do is, one, if you remember earlier, I talked about the 0 to 1 on these. If I multiply by 1 and press enter, I get my normal information back and it's no longer flat. That's cool, but I can't actually do anything. Like if I applied this and jumped over to here, my UE4 guy still has his normal information, but I still can't adjust it. So I'm going to convert this into a parameter as well. The shortcut to making this or make a parameter off the back is holding S and clicking, but because the shortcuts, let's see if that'll work. Okay, there we go. So I guess the number keys don't work for the shortcut through screen sharing. I want to make a a normal offset. So I'm going to make this normal scale. I no longer need this one. I'm going to plug this into here. Give it a default value of 1. And now I have my normal information. This is pretty useful. Over here, this is the first time we're encountering something like this, where you have a default value, a slider min, and a slider max. This helps when you don't want your values that you're adjusting to go too high. So if I left this open-ended, I can adjust this for days. So if I click off this and click here and just drag onto the side by clicking and dragging, I can make the normal information really high. And you can see like some of this stuff is like popping. I can invert it by going super negative, which isn't necessary. If I drop down here and instead of having these the same being 0, 0, if I press this to 1 and clicked onto it, now if I wanted to like slide this, I can't go any higher than 1. If I take it back down, I can't go any lower than 0. So it kind of gives me like a nice adjuster to where I can easily slide this value. If I applied this and went back to my base material and enabled it, now I can adjust this on the material instance side. So 0 normal information looks really flat. Slide this back to 1. He has all this definition again. 1. You may want to do this. I don't know why you would, but hey, I want to make this invert. So 0 to 1 brings things out. If you go lower than 0, it takes things and make them go in. So the inverse. So if I take this back to -1, you see the difference, how this is like looping in now. The indents are now going inward instead of on the outside. But if I make this 1, it's going the opposite direction. Is everybody still following along? Did I lose anybody in that part? All right. I will take your silence as a no. So the next parts that I want to adjust are the roughness, the ambient occlusion, and the metallic, because like I said before, those things are very high. So I'm going to make 3 variables. So 1, and I'm going to call this metallic scale. Roughness scale. And 1 more. AO scale. And then I'm going to plug all these into their corresponding spots. So I like to do them one at a time just so I don't forget where I'm plugging things in. But I can also, because I have this set up already, I can always refer back to that. So there's that. I'm going to plug this one into here. The metallic, my metallic is this one. Just the last one. This is going into my B. This is just going into here. And my last one, which is this, with my roughness, I plug into here, plug that into there, and plug in my roughness. So this stuff is starting to get a little messy, and I'm wanting to like starting to clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to try to place these in spots where it's not too distracting to look at. I think my roughness goes before that. So let's do this. There's that. There's that. Sure. So we have all the roughness, all my other things are set. If you notice, none of them have their values on here. So I want to go in here and just set all these to 1, just so I can get the natural values that the material's already giving me, or that the texture's already giving me. And then I'm going to apply that. And now, if I go back to my character, I have all these values that I can adjust. So I can turn these all on. And let's see how I can fix some of this stuff. So the metallic, if I drop this down, you can see where the neck is becoming less shiny. I can crank to a 0.5. If I wanted to change the normal scale over here, this is still limited, so I don't have much that I can change over here. If I want to change my roughness, I can shift this, increase this, and then my AO scale, which because it's a flat color, I'm not going to get much picked up from there. AO is generally a gradient where you have like your dark grays fading into like a, I want to say a little bit of an off-white or a little light gray. So now I have my character set up. I have some scalar values I can change. I have this that I can modify. There's one more thing I could do. Like we had like those lovely emissives that we can actually offset. So here I see that the main body is green and the smaller components are red and blue. If I wanted to, what I could do is I can make a mask layer to only make certain spots emissive. So I'm going to make a multiply. I'm going to take a 4 node, or there we go. Convert this into a emissive tint. I'll plug this into here, and it doesn't really matter which one of these I choose. I'll choose the red one, and I'm going to plug this into emissive. So oftentimes other people may use something else. If I done my preview, change my color here to, let's see, white. You can see what parts are going to be emissive. You can also see on this which parts are going to be emissive as well. If I apply this and go back to my UE4 guy, these are my red parts. If I enable this, I can do some more modifications to it as well, such as making this 10, this 0. And the more I increase that value, the more it gets more intense. I can change these to 1. Let's do another. So I'm starting to get more of that bloom. As you can see, the more I increase, the more emissive it gets. I'm gonna like crank this. Super glowing Tron UE4 guy. One thing you should note about emissives in Unreal, if you set this to 0, it'll turn it completely off. You can't have a black emissive in Unreal. So like the darker the color you feed in, the less emissive it's going to be. So that's like a rule of thumb that you can think about when you're working off of emissives. The same thing with a mask. If you're using a mask, the more black you feed into it, the less of the object you're going to see. So all around those points of how color works or how masks work continue throughout the whole process. So now we have our pink UE4 guy. He's set up. We have his material set up. The next thing that I want to just like briefly touch on, just so like, how many of you have made something and you left it and you never came back to it until like you really needed it and you're like, I don't know what I did,
All the time.
right? Like you just jump in there and you don't know what you did at all, right? If you highlight this in here and just press C, you get a comment. So now you can type up what this is. This is, it controls color. Click off of it. Now I have a box that can remind me what exactly this does. If I can also change up a few things by clicking on the comment bubble. So if I like click this comment bubble over here, I can change up some stuff. I can change the color of the comment bubble. So I'm like, yeah, I want this to be like blue or just like teal color. There we go. All right. So I have that. I can go to the next one. I might want to like move this back just so it's not in the middle of all of that noise. I'm going to press C on this. Give it another color just so it's easy to like place when I come back here. So this gives it like a little information to follow up what you did there. Another thing you can do, like I'm giving you all the tips to help you or your teammates. It's like, oh, I clicked on this and your teammate's new to the project and it's like text_norm. I don't have any idea what this thing is and how this works. Over here, you have this thing called material expression. So you have your general, the parameter name, groups, sort priority, and description. Place normal texture here. You have a little tooltip. And what this does is if I apply this and I go over here, if I hover over this, it says place normal texture here. If I hover over the other ones, they say nothing. Found none, nothing. So another thing that I want to talk about in here is another organizational thing that'll help you. So you see how this thing says sort order and group description and all that, and you're like, what is this? If I go here and just change this to normal, press enter, I'm going to click on this. It has the same thing, interesting enough. Call this normal and press enter. If I apply this and go back to my material, normal scale, normal texture. So now all my normal stuff is all together. If I jumped back over here and I was like, I want the texture first and the value that I can change second. If I go here and change this to 1, apply, and jump back over, it now has taken that value that was above and put it underneath it. So why not continue doing the rest of this stuff? So it's like, hey, this is place normal here. What is this? Normal scale. I'm going to go in here and just say like, hey, what this does and my description. So now whoever comes here next time, you have, oh, this makes the normal go brr, and I place a normal texture here. Got it. And you can do that with pretty much everything in here. You can organize it. At base, it organizes all the items by what they are. So this says it's a texture value. This says it's a scale parameter value. And this last one says This one is a vector parameter value. These names are very important later on, and I'm going to show you how in a second. So we've talked about making a material instance. We've talked about how to set up a basic one for your textures, for your projects. Now let's briefly just talk about like things that we can do inside here to manipulate them. So say for instance, like if you recall earlier, I showed off an example where my UE4 guy walked over a spot and I changed the color, but then when it left that spot, it changed back. So I'm just gonna go back to the content folder. I'm going to make a blueprint in here. I guess I'll go into blueprints. I'm gonna right click, make a blueprint class, call it an actor. And I do a naming convention of BP underscore, and I'm just gonna call this demo. Usually I'm more descriptive by these things, but you know, this is a demo. So I have this demo blueprint. I'm going to open up the demo blueprint. And we're going to do a little bit of blueprinting. Don't worry, don't feel nervous about it. I'll show you the nodes that we're going to need. So we'll go to the event graph, and you have a few nodes here. We don't need any of these. So we're going to select all of these and delete. We're going to go to add component. Scroll down until you see box collision, and we're just going to make one of those. We have a box. You can name it what you want to over here or double click on it. There we go. And you can name it. I'm going to leave mine as box for now because the biggest thing that I need is the stuff that the box brings with it. So I'm going to right click on this, add an event, go to event begin overlap, click that, right click on it again, and do event on component end overlap. And now I have these two lovely nodes. And all I'm going to do is drag out from here. So other actor, type in cast to third person character. And what I want to do is I want to get this twice. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here, plug it in here. And all this is going to do is whenever the UE4 guy steps on this, it's going to trigger this. Whenever it steps off, it's going to trigger this one. The next thing what I want to do is I'm going to pull from here. And earlier we were like putting the materials on the mesh of the UE4 guy. So of course what we're going to get, you guessed it, is the mesh. So if I type get mesh, I have that. This one right here, I'm going to drag out from here, and I'm going to type create, and it already gives me the rest. The moment I type material, it already knows I want to create a dynamic material instance. What this does is it allows me to adjust the materials, or it allows me to get a reference to the UE4's material or the guy's material, and now I can use blueprints to adjust that. So I'm going to plug this into here. From here, it needs a source material. So what I'm going to do is drag off from here and tell it, hey, I want you to get material. And it'll be this one. And all I'm going to do is take that and plug it into here. So I'm casting to the third person character. I'm getting the mesh from that character. I'm getting the material, and I'm going to plug it as the source material. From over here, what I want to do is I want to go back over here and look at this, and I'm like, I want to change the color of the UE4 guy. So I'm going to change the color tint, and the type of thing that I want to change is the vector parameter value. So over here, I'm going to pull out from here and type in vector, and it's already there. Set vector parameter value. Cool. So it comes up here. It has parameter name is none, and it has a color. I'm going to choose a color, maybe blue. And now, if I test this, it's not going to do anything because there's no none value. What I want to adjust is this, the color tint. And I want to spell this the exact same way. So color, capital T, I-N-T. So I'm going to go over here. Color, capital T, I-N-T. And I'm just going to compile. Cool beans, I have that. And now I'm just going to take the blueprint that I just made and plop it into the scene. And honestly, I don't know which Unreal guy I'm going to possess when I play the game, just because I made so many. Let's see. All right, it was this one. Cool. So I think I put that thing over here somewhere. Let's go back. And I'm just going to scale it up to make it where if I touch this staircase, and what I did is I just put a space bar to navigate through these different options. It allows you to translate, rotate, and scale. So I'm going to take the UE4 guy, and I'm just going to walk up to the stairs. And you see on the inside of here, this part turned blue when I walk through there. But I'm going to go back here and look at what is actually being changed here. So that's the color tint. This guy, he still has the other material where I had color tint at. So as long as that exists, I can still use it. But I don't necessarily want the UE4 to change in that capacity. I want him to use the new material that I made for him. So I'm going to choose this one, and I'm just going to drag it onto him. And then push play. And then walk into the trigger, and boom, I'm blue now. So no matter what, I'm now permanently blue until I stop the game. If I wanted something else to happen, like, I don't know, I wanted to change him back to the color that he was beforehand, I need to get a value of what he was beforehand and save it to change him back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out from here and say, hey, get my vector value. And I'm going to use the same name. Copy this, paste this here to that. And I want to save this value, so I'm going to pull from here and promote this to a variable. And what this does is just stores the value of the color so I can get it again later on. So here I'm going to just call this color tint. And I'm going to take this and plug this over here. Drag out from here and promote to variable, if I understood your question correctly. Awesome. And I'm just doing housekeeping stuff by cleaning up some of these options. The reason why I did it this way, if I put this behind the set value, the color would remain blue. I have to get that value before I set the color to blue. So now what I can do is I can grab this variable by selecting these, and I'm going to control select the set value, and I'm going to control W to duplicate it. No problem. So now that I have this, I'm just going to plug them in the same way. So this one's going to do this. This one's going to go here. And this one's going to go here. For those of you who are technical in here and you're like, yo, Hez, why did you do that instead of setting the UE4 mesh into a value and then doing this? I'm doing this just for the sake of like keeping everybody on board with what I'm doing. There is a more efficient way of doing this where up here, I can change this to a variable and save it. And then instead of doing all of this, I just have it, hey, when the UE4 guy leaves, I grab that variable and set the color. So I'm going to get this, plug this here. I'm going to compile. And I'm going to push play here. So if I run into this, I'm blue, and I leave it, I'm back to pink. Is everybody there?
All right.
Awesome. What was the last variable? This one, the color tint? It's just the color that I picked up from the model when it first entered the trigger. So from the get value, I just promoted to a variable. And then when the UE4 guy over here, when it ends overlapping the box, it'll change the tint of it to here. So I tried to just talk about a few things inside the materials. You could do the same thing that we did before. You can highlight, press C, let me know like changes. There we go. And you can do the same thing you did in the other material. There's change this as well. Compile, and I'm done with this blueprint. If you want, I can talk about some other things. I could include some more variables. But that was pretty much what I had planned for today's demo. Is just showing how to set up a material for a character, how to adjust colors on them, how to manipulate them through a blueprint, and how to make instant materials and the importance of them.
All right.
No problem. I encourage everybody to play around with some more of these options over here, just because like there's tons of them, like tons and tons and tons of like options that you can use going forward. I wish I had enough time in the day just to talk about every single thing that's inside of here. Like color burning, like in Photoshop, works the same way. You can do color blend overlays, like desaturating. So just in case you made a material of a character and you wanted to change it, you can desaturate the color and then do a tint layer on top of it. If you press P and click, you'll get like a panner node. That's what a lot of people like to use, where it allows the material texture to pan on whatever axis you chose. So like if it's not over here. If I plug this into here, and I set this to like 2, I can make the material spin. Uh, if you've ever wanted to scale stuff, you'll use a texture coordinate. I think the shortcut to that is U. Yeah, it's U. I don't know why I guess because UV, but like it took me a while to like remember that that was the shortcut for a texture coordinate. If I plug this into here, instead of letting it rotate, the texture coordinate just talks about how it duplicates along a UV channel. So if I looked at this way, it's now doing a 1 by 1. If I did this to 10, it's now going like 10 along the U axis. If I did 10 again, it's now going 10 by the U, 10 by the Y, or 10 by the V axis. So there's a lot of stuff. You might question where you can use this. Tileable textures on floors. You make one and then you just change the texture coordinates to duplicate it across the whole space. Yeah. Cool beans. Anybody got any questions? Awesome. Once again, thank you, Heather, for letting me use your computer.
Yeah, sure thing.
Oh,
You
Tony
know,
is raising his hand. What's up, Tony? Uh, oh, sorry. I didn't see the notification over here. Yeah, F in the chat. I'll release my side of here.
right.